My name is Barak Ibrahim, welcoming you to Campus Tutorial TV. In today's edition, we will be discussing about propaganda, which of course has a relationship with our previous topic, which is public opinion. In today's edition, the main focus of our discussion will be the brief history of propaganda, as well as some of the tools for recognizing propaganda and responding to it by drawing boundary between propaganda and persuasion. Propaganda is a wide area that has attracted the attention of other disciplines like history, international relations, political science, sociology, psychology, and journalism. For the sake of this class, we will be considering propaganda as part of journalism. And to consider propaganda as part of journalism is to examine how news management and spin shapes information, emphasizing positive features and downplaying negative ones, as well as casting institutions such as government in a favorable light.
Propaganda comes from the Latin word propagare, which means to spread or grow. It was originally instituted by Pope Gregory XV in the Sacra Congregatio de Propaganda Fide, meaning the sacred congregation for propagating the faith of Roman Catholic Church in the 17th century.
Its main purpose then was to Christianize the world, because the propaganda of the Roman Catholic Church had as its intent spreading the faith to the New World, as well as opposing Protestantism as at that time. Because it was a noble cause to be a true and successful propagandist in 1623. Propaganda has been defined differently by different scholars. For example, Jowett and Ordonell define propaganda as a deliberate, systematic attempt to shape perceptions, manipulate cognitions, and direct behavior to achieve a response that furthers the desired intent of the propagandist. On the other hand, Doheny defines propaganda as an art of psychological warfare. However, Webster's Collegiate Dictionary 10th edition defines propaganda as ideas, facts, or allegations spread deliberately to further one's cause or to damage an opposing cause. Three keywords in this definition help distinguish propaganda from other kinds of communication. The most important is cause, which implies some sort of dogma or value system that one is trying to propagate, be it political, economic, religious, or a host of others. This helps us rule out many kinds of communication that are not dogmatic or related to a cause. For example, although advertising promotes a brand, it does not promote a cause or ideology unless it is a candidate or a religious organization that advertisement is promoting. The second most important word in the definition is deliberately, because it helps us rule out a great many kinds of communication in which there is no intent to spread any cause. The third most important word is spread, which carries with it the idea of reaching many persons with communication about the cause. This helps us distinguish propaganda from instances in which individuals are trying to affect only one person or a few other persons. So, with this definition, we can understand that propaganda is different from any other kind of communication, such as public relations, advertising, and other persuasive communication, because propaganda deliberately spreads a doctrine, and no more, no less. And it is important to understand that not all communication we get via the mass media is propaganda by our definition. Having discussed propaganda, we will now look at some of the tools that are used for recognizing propaganda and responding to it, because being able to identify propaganda reduces its effectiveness and perhaps even renders it harmless. Therefore, the following are the tools for recognizing propaganda and responding to it. The first tool that you need to equip yourself with is to understand that propaganda is purely ideological. And the second one is that propaganda uses mass media. The third one is that propaganda conceals. The fourth one is that propaganda aims at uniformity. And finally, propaganda bypasses reasoning process. These are 5 things you must understand for you to be able to understand or recognize propaganda and respond to it. I will now take each and every one of them and explain it for better understanding. The first one, propaganda is ideological. This is because propaganda usually tries to sell a system of belief or value system. And that system of belief, value system or dogma can be religious, political, or even economic. The second one is that propaganda uses mass media. Propaganda usually uses some form of mass communication to sell ideology. And the media that could be used in the propaganda process include documentary, films, TV programs, radio shows, posters, billboards, mass mailing, speech, etc. Propaganda uses this mass communication technology because ideas that are spread interpersonally do not affect a large numbers of people and so do not qualify as propaganda. That is why some scholars maintain that radio in particular have succeeded in bringing into existence the possibility of continuous international propaganda, whereas television has increased the problem of cultural imperialism, where one nation's culture is imposed upon another nation. The third tool for identifying propaganda and responding to it is to understand that propaganda usually conceals. For example, one or some combination of the following is usually kept away from the target audience. He will never know them. 1. The sources of the message, the source's goal, the other side of the story, the technique being used in sending the message, and the result of the propaganda if successful. These are usually kept hidden from the sources. He will never know them, no matter why, no matter how. Then another tool we will consider is that propaganda usually aims at uniformity. This is because propaganda seeks communality in the beliefs, attitudes, and behavior of its receivers. It wanted to attract or provoke response at the same time. That is what this point is saying. And then the final tool a receiver of mass media message should be able to equip himself with in order to prevent the effectiveness of propaganda and at the same time renders it harmless is to understand that propaganda bypasses reasoning process. In other words, propaganda circumvents the reasoning process. This is because propaganda usually appeals to the hearts and not to the mind of the audience. This is because if the propagandist presented both sides of the story
or issue, people would likely make up their minds and the propaganda would probably fail. So, to bypass logical thinking, propaganda uses biased information that stir up audience's emotion and force the audience to the opinion of the propagandist. So this brings us to the end of today's edition. In our next edition, God's willing, we will talk about the types of propaganda, the techniques of propaganda, and at the same time discuss why do people always imagine that anything propaganda is negative. Goodbye.